In life, sometimes, you allow your heart to lead you, and you know what? Your heart can never mislead you. My name is Anastasia, a devoted nun in St. Mary's Seminary, and this is my story. But, before we dive straight into this amazing story, please like and subscribe for more.
The compound of St. Mary's Seminary was always quiet. The white walls, tall trees, and old chapel gave the place a sense of peace that no one could explain. Reverend sisters moved about in silence, tending to the gardens, teaching the children at the orphanage, or praying in the chapel. For Sister Anastasia, a young nun who had only taken her vows 3 years ago, this silence was her comfort. She believed she had left the world behind to serve God fully. But that day, silence was broken by the arrival of black cars that stopped at the seminary's gate. Everyone already knew who it was. Mr. David, the billionaire whose generosity had kept the seminary alive for many years. He was known not just for his wealth but also for his unusual kindness. He never came empty-handed. Sister Anastasia watched from the window of the small library as the man stepped out of his car. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with a calm dignity. He smiled warmly as the Mother Superior came forward to greet him. Children from the orphanage ran towards him shouting his name, and he bent down to hug them as though they were his own. Anastasia told herself that she had no reason to watch any longer. After all, visitors often came to the seminary. But something about this particular man kept her eyes fixed on him. She felt her heart beat strangely, and she quickly shook her head, reminding herself that she had made vows of chastity and obedience. That evening, after David left, the sisters gathered to talk about his visit. Some joked about how he always remembered to bring them fruits, books, and sometimes even clothes. Others admired how humble he was, despite his wealth. Anastasia kept quiet, though her mind replayed the way he laughed with the children and how his smile seemed to light up the courtyard. She scolded herself for thinking too much about him. But deep inside, she knew something unusual had been stirred in her heart. She did not know whether to fight it or to ignore it. The following week, David returned again, earlier than expected. This time, Anastasia happened to be at the chapel door when he arrived. Their eyes met for the first time. It was a brief glance, but it felt longer than it really was. David greeted her politely, but his voice carried a warmth that unsettled her. She quickly lowered her gaze and stepped aside, pretending to be busy. Yet, for the rest of that day, she kept recalling his voice. Meanwhile, David too was not himself. On his way home, he found his mind replaying the image of a young nun with bright eyes and an innocent face. That night, as Anastasia lay on her narrow bed in the dormitory, she could not sleep. She told herself she was overthinking a simple encounter. But her heart refused to listen. She began to realize that she was entering dangerous ground. Falling in love was not an option for a nun. But why did her heart race at the thought of him? Why did she suddenly look forward to his visits? As though her whole day depended on it? She did not know, but one thing was certain, her life at the seminary was about to change forever. The seminary compound was buzzing with unusual excitement that Saturday morning. Word had spread that David would be returning again, this time to deliver a large consignment of supplies for the orphanage. Mother Superior had instructed all the sisters to prepare the storeroom and the children to line up to welcome him. It was supposed to be just another donation, but Anastasia's heart was restless. She tried to keep herself busy, but her thoughts kept drifting. She reminded herself that she was supposed to focus on prayer and service, not on a man she barely knew. But no matter how she prayed, his face kept intruding on her mind. When the cars finally drove in, Anastasia stood among the other sisters, pretending to blend into the crowd. David stepped out, dressed in a simple white shirt and black trousers. Despite his simplicity, his presence commanded attention. He greeted everyone warmly, but his eyes searched quickly through the group until they landed on Anastasia. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but she caught it. Her cheeks burned as she quickly looked away. He began unloading boxes filled with food, books, and clothes, but then he reached for a smaller package, which he handed directly to Anastasia. "This one is for you, sister," he said softly, almost in a whisper. Everyone assumed it was just a random gesture of kindness. But Anastasia knew better. Her hands trembled slightly as she accepted the parcel, murmuring a polite thank you. Inside the box, she later discovered, was a simple necklace with a small cross pendant. It was beautiful, modest, yet far too personal to be dismissed as just another donation. She hid it quickly, not wanting the other sisters to see. That night, as she held the pendant in her hand, she wondered what it meant. Why her? Why now? David, on the other hand, could no longer pretend. He had tried to fight the strange pull he felt toward Anastasia, but seeing her up close again only deepened his feelings. She was unlike any woman he had ever met. He had been around socialites, models, and even celebrities, but none of them carried the quiet grace and innocence that Anastasia had. He knew the boundaries were high, she was a nun, after all, but his heart no longer cared about rules. For the first time in years, he found himself restless, unable to focus on his business meetings, replaying her shy smile in his mind over and over again. Meanwhile, Anastasia's guilt began to grow. She could not wear the necklace openly, but she could not let go of it either. It was as though the little cross had become a secret message between her and David. Every night, she would hold it in her hands and feel both comforted and troubled at the same time. She told herself it was wrong, that she had chosen a life of devotion. Yet, the more she tried to suppress her feelings, the stronger they grew. She did not know how long she could hide her secret, but deep inside, she sensed that this was only the beginning of something much bigger, something she might not be able to control. Days passed after David's last visit, but Anastasia's mind refused to rest. The necklace had become her hidden burden. She kept it carefully wrapped in cloth under her pillow, terrified someone would discover it. During prayers, she tried to push away the distracting thoughts, but every verse of scripture seemed to remind her of sacrifice, temptation, and obedience. She wondered if it was God warning her. Yet, despite the guilt, her heart longed for David's next visit. She hated to admit it, but she counted the days like a prisoner waiting for freedom. One evening, while she was sweeping the chapel corridor, Sister Maria, her closest friend, approached her. "You've been quiet these days, Anastasia," she said, studying her face. "Are you all right?" Anastasia forced a smile and nodded quickly. But Maria wasn't convinced. She lowered her voice and whispered, "Be careful. I see the way David looks at you when he comes here." Anastasia froze, her broom slipping slightly from her hand. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Maria gave a knowing smile. "I'm not blind, Anastasia. But remember, we made vows. Don't let your heart wander where it shouldn't." With that, she walked away, leaving Anastasia trembling. That night, sleep refused to come. Anastasia tossed and turned, her friend's warning echoing in her ears. Was it that obvious? Could the other sisters see what she was trying so hard to hide? Fear gripped her, but at the same time, she realized that her feelings were no longer something she could simply brush aside. For the first time, she admitted to herself that she was falling in love. It was dangerous, foolish even, but it was the truth. She held the necklace close to her chest, whispering prayers that sounded more like confessions than requests. Meanwhile, David himself was fighting his own battles. In his luxurious home, surrounded by wealth and comfort, he felt an emptiness that no amount of money could fill. His friends often urged him to settle down and marry, but none of the women he met touched his heart. Only Anastasia did, and she was the one woman he couldn't have. He paced his study late into the night, debating with himself. Should he stop visiting the seminary to avoid trouble? Or should he pursue the feelings that were consuming him? In the end, his heart won. He told himself that fate wouldn't have let him meet her if it wasn't meant to be. A week later, David returned to the seminary, but this time, things were different. He didn't arrive with fanfare or gifts. He came alone, in a smaller car, and asked specifically to see Mother Superior. Anastasia's heart nearly stopped when she heard his voice in the courtyard. She stayed hidden, but every nerve in her body was on edge. What was he planning? Why was he meeting the Mother Superior? Privately? She didn't know, but one thing was certain, whatever happened in that office would change everything. The news spread quickly among the sisters. David had come without his usual entourage and had spent nearly an hour behind closed doors with Mother Superior. No one knew the details of the conversation, but speculation was everywhere. Some believed he was planning a major renovation project for the orphanage. Others thought he was offering a large donation. Anastasia said nothing, but her heart beat furiously. She wanted to believe it was just about charity, yet deep down, she feared it had something to do with her. That evening, while the other sisters prepared for dinner, Mother Superior called Anastasia into her office. The moment she stepped in, she sensed the atmosphere was different. The older woman's eyes studied her carefully, almost too carefully. Anastasia, she began slowly, you've been one of our most devoted sisters. But I must ask, has your heart remained steady in your vows? The question nearly knocked the breath out of her. Anastasia stammered, Mother, I don't understand. Mother Superior leaned forward. David has spoken of you. He admires your devotion. He says you inspire him. There was a pause. But tell me, child, do you feel anything in return? Anastasia's throat went dry. She wanted to deny it outright, but the truth burned inside her like fire. She lowered her eyes, whispering, I don't know, Mother. The silence that followed felt heavier than stone. Finally, Mother Superior sighed. Be very careful, Anastasia. The heart is deceitful. Do not let feelings lead you away from your purpose. She dismissed her gently, but the words weighed on Anastasia long after she left. That night, she barely touched her food. The sisters noticed her distraction, but no one dared to question her openly. Meanwhile, David drove home replaying the conversation with Mother Superior. He had not confessed everything, but he had hinted enough to make his intentions clear. He wanted to be closer to Anastasia, though he had not yet said the forbidden word, love. He hoped that his wealth and good intentions might soften the walls that kept them apart. But he underestimated how strong those walls were. The seminary was not just a place of residence for Anastasia, it was her vow, her life, her identity. To pull her away would be like tearing fabric that could never be stitched back together. Still, he was determined. He told himself that love was worth fighting for. The following Sunday, during Mass, Anastasia noticed David sitting quietly at the back of the chapel. He wasn't there for a donation or for a ceremony. He was simply there. Their eyes met briefly, and she felt her chest tighten. For the rest of the service, her prayers were broken by the conflict raging in her soul. Could she really continue like this, pretending nothing was happening, when her whole being was slowly being consumed by forbidden feelings? She didn't have the answer. But she knew one thing: the battle had only just begun. The air in the seminary grew heavier with each of David's visits. Anastasia noticed how the sisters began whispering whenever his name was mentioned. Though no one confronted her directly, their glances carried silent questions. She tried harder than ever to appear unaffected, leading prayers, teaching the children, and joining in community work. But inside, she was drowning. Her heart had become a battlefield, torn between duty and desire. One evening, Sister Maria cornered her in the garden. Anastasia, she said firmly, I can't keep silent anymore. People are talking. They say you and David share more than just polite greetings. Anastasia's face flushed. That's not true, she whispered quickly. But Maria's eyes searched her soul. Is it not? She pressed. Tears welled in Anastasia's eyes as she looked away. Maria, I don't want this. I didn't plan it. But my heart, her voice broke, and Maria pulled her into a hug. You have to decide, Maria whispered. Either you cut it off completely or you'll destroy yourself, and maybe even this seminary. Meanwhile, David's patience was running out. He had tried to respect the boundaries, but each visit left him more restless. That night, he made a bold decision. He sent a discreet message through one of the workers at the orphanage. asking Anastasia to meet him privately by the old chapel well after evening prayers. Anastasia almost tore the note apart in fear, but her trembling hands betrayed her heart's eagerness. She knew it was dangerous. If caught, it could mean disgrace. But the pull was too strong. When the time came, she slipped quietly out of the dormitory. The night was cool, and the compound eerily silent. David was already waiting, leaning against the stone wall, his expression soft but intense. When their eyes met, no words were needed at first. Finally, he spoke in a low voice. Anastasia, I can't pretend anymore. I love you. I know this breaks every rule, but my heart won't let me walk away. Anastasia's breath caught. The words she had feared and longed to hear were now real. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, David, don't say that. You know I can't, I took vows. He stepped closer, careful not to touch her. I know. But do you feel the same? Her silence was the only answer he needed. In that moment, their hearts confessed what their lips could not. But before anything more could be said, a sudden sound broke the night. Footsteps. Voices. Anastasia's heart raced as she quickly pulled back. Someone's coming, she whispered urgently. She hurried away, leaving David standing in the shadows, his chest heavy with both relief and fear. The truth was now out in the open between them, but it was also dangerously close to being exposed to the world. Back in her dormitory, Anastasia fell to her knees in tears. For the first time, she admitted it without denial, she loved him. But loving him meant risking everything she had vowed to live for. How could God allow her heart to feel this way? Was it temptation, or was it destiny? She didn't know. But one thing was certain, the secret was no longer safe. Something had to give. The next morning, Anastasia woke with swollen eyes from a night of tears and prayers. She avoided everyone, fearing her emotions would betray her. But it was too late, whispers were already spreading. Some sisters had noticed her absence during the night. Mother Superior called her again, her face stern. Anastasia, what is going on between you and David? The weight of the question broke her. She fell to her knees, sobbing. Mother, I tried to fight it, I swear. But my heart betrayed me. I love him. The confession hung heavy in the air. For a long while, the older woman said nothing. Then, with surprising gentleness, she sighed. You are human, child. Love is no sin. But your vows must be taken seriously. This is not a decision I can make for you. You must choose. We will give you some weeks off to put your thoughts in order. Thank you, Mother. Anastasia said as she packed few of her things and exited the seminary. While she was away, she engaged herself with a lot of activities just to get David out of her mind, but none was working. Weeks later, she returned to the seminary. Anastasia spent the next few days in deep torment. She prayed, fasted, and begged God for clarity. The seminary walls that once felt like safety now felt like a prison. Every hymn she sang seemed to mock her struggle. Meanwhile, David refused to back down. He visited again, this time openly asking to see Anastasia. The boldness shocked the sisters, and some were furious, but Mother Superior allowed it. If this is to end, let it end in truth, she declared. In the meeting, David spoke with a sincerity that silenced everyone. Mother Superior, sisters, I know this is not how things are done. But I love Anastasia. I do not want to destroy her vows or drag her into shame. I am here to ask, not to take her, but to give her the freedom to decide. If she chooses her vows, I will respect it. But if she chooses me, I promise to honor her with marriage and a life of purpose. The room was still. Anastasia's heart pounded as every eye turned to her. She felt as though the world was holding its breath. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she finally stood. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. I came here to serve God, and I still want to. But God Himself is love. I cannot deny what He has placed in my heart. I love David. Gasps filled the room. Some sisters shook their heads in disapproval, while others looked moved. Mother Superior closed her eyes for a long moment, then said quietly, "Then it is settled. Anastasia, you are released from your vows. Go in peace, and may your love be as strong as your faith." The wedding that followed months later was unlike any other. It wasn't extravagant despite David's wealth, it was simple, filled with children from the orphanage, the sisters from the seminary, and friends who admired their courage. Anastasia walked down the aisle, not in a nun's habit but in a simple white gown, her eyes glowing with both joy and peace. David stood waiting, his smile wide and steady. As they exchanged vows, it was clear they had both fought battles to be there. Their love had been tested by fear, guilt, and sacrifice, but it had survived. Together, they built a new life, one where Anastasia continued serving God in her own way, through charity, helping orphans, and supporting missions, while being a wife to David. Their story became a lesson to many, that love and faith are not enemies, but partners when guided by honesty and purpose. They lived happily, not because the journey was easy, but because they chose each other with courage. And in the end, their love was not forbidden, it was a gift.